Hello, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 467 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. It is Sunday, December 11th, 2022, and we are entering, it's not like we're taking them, but the Duke Basketball Report is entering the exam break along with the Duke men's basketball team. Team is now 10-2, which is a great feeling for Duke. And we are going to talk about their win over Maryland Eastern Shore, a school that I'm sure all of you knew about last week. I am your host for this week. I am Sam Klein. I'm joined by Jason Evans and Donald Wine, as I often am. And I need to apologize before I say hi to the guys for not showing up on the episode last week, despite the tease from Jason that I might appear at some point. Occupational hazard. So, Jason, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. I had a really interesting past several days. Wagering money and winning money, and I will tell everyone about that a little later in the show.
Do we have to issue one of those gambling addiction warnings that they have to do on all the DraftKings commercials for this, or because we're not sponsored by them, we're okay?
We are unless there's a secret ad that we're not aware of. No, we do not have to issue any disclaimers.
Okay, and Donald Wine is also here. Donald, any vices you need to promote this morning?
No, but if I can take a minute, in my world, obviously you guys know I'm in college basketball and also on the soccer side. And on this, honestly, on both sides of this, we lost a great man a couple of days ago in Grant Wall. He, was the guy who became a good friend of mine over the years, just through the soccer travels, but also, as renowned a legend as he is in the soccer world for journalism, he also was that in the college basketball world. A lot of people don't realize that before he really did full-time soccer, he was covering college basketball. He covered, the Chosen One article about LeBron James was a Grant Wall article.
Super famous article. Yeah.
I mean, one of the more famous articles in the history of, Sports Illustrated was a lot of those were written by Grant Wall. He died covering the World Cup. It was his 8th men's World Cup. He had done 5 women's World Cups before that. And it was just a big loss for all of us, and especially for those who knew him well, like I did. He had been on one of my podcasts before. I had been on his podcast a couple of times. We always kind of hung out during all these soccer travels that I go on. He was always there, always, willing to help out and amplify voices that were that he felt needed to be lifted up. So for those who knew Grant, for those who appreciated his work, rest in peace to Grant. We thank him for what he brought to the game, and just hopefully we all can do a little bit to continue his legacy.
And thank you, Donald, for mentioning that and bringing it up. We obviously didn't know him as well as you did, but appreciated his writing and his coverage, as you said, not only of soccer, but of all kinds of sports content through the years. And so thank you for doing that.
If I can really quick, it's unbelievably tragic when someone dies this young. It seems there's no solace for anyone who knew him, Donald, or for his family or anything like that. At least he died doing what he loved. I mean, covering the World Cup. But it's it's so difficult when someone goes at this age, and it makes he's younger than I am, so it makes all of us take a moment and think about, are we spending our time wisely? So thanks for giving us perspective on it. Yeah.
No easy way then to transition to the Duke game, but let's do that for this episode. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves and preview a Wake Forest game that's not happening for like 2 weeks. So all we're going to do today is recap Duke's final non-conference game against Maryland Eastern Shore. Whether you got to watch it or not last night, the final score was Duke 82, Maryland Eastern Shore 55. If you look up the win probability graph on KenPom, you might think it's broken because it doesn't look like there's anything there. That's because Duke never had less than a 98.5% chance of winning this game, which is basically what we had hoped for in the preview that you guys did the other day for this one. But a few interesting wrinkles here. One was devastating that maybe we should do even before the toe injury, which brings up no bad memories, of course, for Duke fans, talking about star point guards having toe injuries in December. But with that all out of the way, maybe we can just briefly talk about the Roach injury before we actually get to the game. So, Jason, can you fill us in? What do we know right now about the Roach injury and how potentially serious it is?
I mean, we don't know a great deal. I've heard some stuff that it happened. It didn't happen against Iowa. That it happened even earlier than that. That it happened
Ohio State.
Yeah, and so it's something that clearly wasn't so bad that he had to sit out practices and sit out the game right after it happened or anything like that. It's something that probably has been nagging him for a little while. Duke recognized that this game against Maryland Eastern Shore was one that would not be tremendously competitive. And so they said, you know what, rather than have Jeremy risk it and continue to play on something that's nagging, a nagging injury, let's just let's shut him down. And you know, hopefully he'll be better by the time we play Wake Forest. The rest of Duke's games are ACC games, and not that the ACC schedule counts more than the non-conference schedule, but the ACC schedule counts more than the non-conference schedule. It does. So I think they want him to be really ready for that. My impression would be that this is something where if this was a big game, he would have played as he did against Iowa. So I think it's probably not something that's going to last the way Kyrie's injury did.
The word load management was used a lot last night by several journalists who follow or beat writers for Duke. So I'm inclined to think, yes, Jason, like probably after Madison Square Garden, they go, hey, just get a head start on the Wake Forest game on the 20th and rest now. We'll take care of Maryland Eastern Shore. And that way we have 3 extra days of rest for that toe.
So with Roach out, Jon Scheyer goes with an all-freshman lineup last night. He inserts Dariq Whitehead in Roach's place. So Tyrese Proctor was the starting point guard last night, and Dariq Whitehead was the second smallest guy on the team, which means that Duke was running a fantastically large lineup, something like 6'5", 6'7", 6'9", and then however big Kyle Filipowski and Derek Lively purport to be, somewhere around the 7-foot mark. So
I think they call them. I think they say they're 7 foot and 7'1". And by the way, I've talked about this lineup a couple times, like in the preseason and early this year. I'm like, you know, if Roach isn't in there, we have this lineup because Proctor is a 6'5" point guard. We have this lineup that's massive. Well, we rolled it out there, baby. It was fun to watch.
And it was fun, maybe a little bit sloppy. So why don't we start with sloppy. Why don't we start with the headlines? Donald, I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, so my headline was Duke's freshman shoot through sloppy play to defeat Maryland Eastern Shore. And of course, shoot is spelled SCHUTT.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Jaden Schutt's. It's not his debut performance for Duke, but his best one so far, given his limited minutes. Jason, give me your headline.
I promise I was not peeking at Donald's paper and copying his answer. My headline says 5 freshman starters produce sloppy but successful Duke win.
Yes. And I wanted to share one that I really liked from the emails. Norris David, I believe, sent us one that was great. I'm going to cut off part of his.
This is so much better than ours. It's not even close.
This was the right one, right? No Cameron for old men. So I'm just keeping it with that. I love that reference. So no Cameron for old men. I also had a shoot and youth pun that is not worth sharing. So I'm just gonna take the listener one because I was being redundant to you guys. So why don't we start then? Maybe Donald, you can take it to any of the freshmen who started last night, because I think there were definitely some high points. We definitely have to talk about low points, mainly in the name of turnovers. But Donald, where do you want to start in terms of what was good from this, cruising win over Eastern Shore?
So from the players that started, I'm going to go with Dariq Whitehead. His best game, his trajectory so far, over the last week, we've seen, leaps and bounds, a lot more of the flashes and the more sustained play of the Dariq Whitehead we expected to see before his injury in the preseason. He had 15 points, 2 steals, 2 assists, 2 rebounds, and a block. Again, starting, taking over the game at certain points. He had what I thought was I'll talk about my favorite play of the game, but he definitely had it in the second half with a vicious dunk where he yammed on somebody. But I think when it comes to Dariq Whitehead, we've talked about how the more he plays, the more he practices, the better he's going to get, and the more of the Dariq Whitehead we expected to see will emerge. And we started to see that, and last night was no exception. He co-led the team in points alongside Tyrese Proctor. So if you're keeping track at home, that is 5 Duke players that have led the team in scoring in a game so far this season. I believe we are getting close to Jason and Sam territory when it comes to the number of players that will lead a team in scoring this year. But I thought he had a tremendous performance. Tyrese Proctor quickly plus 30. I mean, he had 15 points, but he had a plus 30 in the plus minus category. Every time he was on the floor, something was going right. That's what that says. So Tyrese Proctor had a great game. Again, filling in a way with the ball handling duties in the absence of Jeremy Roach. Dariq Whitehead brought the ball at times. Tyrese Proctor brought the ball at times. And I like the fact that we have multiple guys that can command and run the offense, because again, if Jeremy Roach is not in the game, if Tyrese Proctor is not in the game, we still have someone that can step up and handle the load of the primary ball handling responsibilities. Dariq Whitehead did that great last night.
I don't know that Whitehead is there yet, but I agree with you that we're getting more and more glimpses of it. That 3-minute run he had in the second half, from the 7:44 mark to the 4:40 mark, he scored 9 points in 3 minutes, punctuated by that nasty yam he had and a pull-up 3-pointer. He then had a little heat check 3-pointer that he took that didn't go down.
I like that.
Yeah, but
it almost did.
Yeah, you want that guy doing that kind of thing. But we're getting more and more of the glimpses, and it is exciting because there's no question that he brings things to the table that there just aren't a lot of other guys in this team or in the country that can do. I mean, there's not a lot of guys who can shoot pull-up threes the way he did, handle the ball the way he did, and go down the lane and just viciously destroy someone the way he did. So yeah, he's taking some ill-advised shots still. I think we're just gonna have to live with that with Dariq Whitehead, but it's exciting to think about what the next 10 days before the Wake game and then the 10 days after that before we get into the real meat of the ACC schedule could do for his progression. It's possible. I'm not sure, but it's possible that Dariq Whitehead starts every game for the rest of the year.
And I think some of that, Jason, will depend on his continued development over the break, because there are a lot of questions now, especially knowing that Roach's injury is bad enough to have at least kept him out of one game. There are a lot of questions about sort of what the minutes distribution will look like even over the next few weeks once Duke returns from this exam break, because Mark Mitchell is up and down. To divert a little bit from the good, Mark Mitchell's up and down. Tyrese Proctor is up and down. Dariq Whitehead is up and down. So it feels like there are a lot of combinations that could be working for Jon Scheyer right now. And the good thing is that headed into the break, they have a little bit more film of the non-Roach team, so that they can sort of see, like, okay, how did some of these sets work? How did some of these lineup combinations work? I'll just say on Whitehead, it still feels to me, I think I agree with Jason, it still feels to me like he's getting up to speed. Look at how small this Maryland Eastern Shore team is. I'm not taking much away from Whitehead being able to slam awesome dunks on a team of guys who are, I think, all smaller than him.
Yeah, and he really, the thing about Whitehead's performance yesterday is, like I said, it really happened in that one little 3-minute segment. It's not like this guy, when Duke was stretching things out early, at the start of the game or anything like that. It's not like he was dominant there. I think let's not get too carried away. I mean, I'm the guy who said, oh, he may not, he may start every game the rest of the year. So maybe I'm the guy getting carried away. But there, with me, it's just that there's so much more that we know that he can do. But he's got to get more efficient. Like even having a big game, even leading the team in scoring, he missed way too many shots.
And for me personally, probably this game was Duke's last best chance to notch 100 points. So good job by me saying Duke's not scoring 100 points this season. Thank you, Jeremy Roach, for sitting that one out and having the long bench play for a while. Jason, I want to also talk about Jaden Schutt. We mentioned that he had one of his best games, 3 3-pointers made. He had, I'll spoil it, my favorite play of the game, which was that little step back 3-pointer in the corner that I did not realize was in his arsenal because of how much, how limited his playing time has been. So Jason, tell me a little bit about Jaden Schutt's performance last night.
So, we start with our headlines, and so does Jon Scheyer. When Jon Scheyer comes in to do his post-game press conference, the very first thing he does is give an opening statement, which is essentially his headline on the game. And I think it is quite significant that Jon Scheyer's headline, the first thing he talked about was the play of Jaden Schutt in this game. He said that Schutt's been working as hard as anybody in practice and that it's starting to really pay off. He said that Schutt's been playing the role of the best opposing player on the scout team. And he talked about how important that is for the team's development, that someone, sort of steps up and says, okay, I'll take on that job. And in fact, this was kind of weird, but Scheyer said that Scheyer, when he was at Duke at one time, was playing the role of the best player on the scout team. I was like, wait, when would he have had? That's weird. I don't know when he would have had that job.
Maybe at some point in his freshman season, but even in his freshman season, he was playing a lot.
He started virtually every game as a sophomore. He was like the sixth man, because Kyrie was there, right? Wait, no, Kyrie wasn't there.
No, they didn't overlap.
Later. I don't know why whatever. If you look back at his stats, I need to, I'm an old man. My memory's not there. But if you look back at his stats, Jon Scheyer was like the sixth man as a sophomore. He wasn't the starter. So maybe as the sixth, but it just seems,
Jason.
Anyway, I'm getting off track. Yeah.
Well, there is one player that I remember sort of famously having this role, which was Seth Curry, because when Seth Curry transferred to Duke, they had very strict rules about guys who, if you transferred, you had to sit out a year. There were very few exceptions. So Seth Curry transferred to Duke after the 2009 season from Liberty. He was, he was a non-playing player in the 2009-2010 season, of course, when Duke won the national championship. And the team talked a lot that season about Seth Curry playing this exact role. And, if
Dante Jones did the same thing.
The original was Dante Jones, who supposedly busted Shane Battier's ass in practice every single day in 2001. And the guys in that team talked to me extensively about how great Dante Jones was as the scout team leader in 2001. Anyway, we've gotten way far afield from Jaden Schutt, but I thought it was really interesting that Jon Scheyer said that Jaden Schutt was taking on that role and that's a really important role. And he said there have been some great Duke players who had that role and then evolved into great players. In any event, I just think the fact that Jaden Schutt got minutes with the regular guys, he wasn't just playing with the scrubs. And that's a significant upgrade. Now, I know that part of it was probably that Jeremy Roach wasn't around, and so the guard rotation sort of moves up a little bit, and that creates extra minutes for him. But I thought for the first time all year, Jaden Schutt looked like he belonged with the regulars, with the starters and the other guys who were in the rotation. I thought his defense was markedly improved from what it's been in the past. Jon Scheyer pointed out that the very first thing that Jaden Schutt did when he came in the game was grab an offensive rebound. And Schutt did a really nice job on the boards in this game. Now, of course, it's easy to look and say he was 3 for 3 from three. And by the way, all three of them, like I love the one where he pump faked a guy, took a dribble, stepped behind the line and buried that 3-pointer. He had great awareness of the 3-point line, which is what you desperately want from a guy who's going to be a big outside shooter. This Duke team has struggled with 3-point shooting. And Jaden Schutt could be part of the answer. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to play 10 plus minutes per game in ACC games going forward, but I think it's very possible that we've seen the beginnings of him being more than just a mop-up guy. I don't know exactly what the role is. And maybe when Roach comes back, he's back to being the 10th man and Scheyer's only playing a 9-man rotation. But there's a possibility here that Duke is now moving to a 10-man rotation and that Jaden Schutt has earned more significant time.
First of all, shout out to my boy Jeff Lamb for just on the last episode, right before he sent us a question about Jaden Schutt and what he needed to do to get on the floor. Jeff just keeps sending emails about Jaden Schutt because obviously every time you do, he steps on the court and he does well. But I think when it comes to Jaden Schutt, you mentioned, Jason, two things. We talked about this in the last episode. He needed to shoot well when he was on the floor, and he needed to play good defense to stay on the floor. Well, he stayed on the floor 19 minutes, which means his defense was pretty good. Like, you're not just going on the floor for 19 minutes just to shoot threes and get out of there. To stay on the floor, you have to play good defense, especially on this team where we play excellent defense so far this season. He needs to be a guy who can keep guys in front of him, and he was doing that. Also, on the 3-point side, you mentioned the step back 3-pointer. He also had that kind of running 3-pointer in the corner right in the second half, right in front of the Duke bench, where he kind of like took a couple steps to the left. And as he was doing that, he shot it and it went in. Those are confidence builders. And as this game is going to be a great confidence boost for him, the one thing that he will need to work on during the break is to become more than just a 3-point shooter. Because in ACC season, if you're just a 3-point shooter, you either have to be very good at getting your shot off, like a Steph Curry, where everyone on the floor knows he can, shoot from anywhere. Or same with JJ, right? When JJ was on the team, he was able to get around and work his way and get open. Even though the entire gym knew he was shooting threes, he still got his threes off. He needs to be able to create his shot or to develop a play where he can, either pass to somebody or become a second dimensional threat where the team can't just, when the other team sees him check into the game, they don't just go, hey, 3-point shooter, and just have him, guarded outside the arc. He needs to be able to develop something else that he'll be able to get that shot off or to create something else. So I liked what I saw from him last night. Again, a really big confidence boost. He stayed in the game. He did well on defense. And that if we're going to have a 9-10 man bench, he's going to be that guy that needs to get hot very quickly and also be able to sustain defense while our starters are off the court.
On another stats game related topic, Derek Lively almost goes for a 10-5-5, but in a slightly unconventional way, because the closest he got to 10 was in the rebounding category. He goes for 9 rebounds, 8 points, and 5 blocks. We can't count it as a 10-5-5, but a pretty nice stat stuffer yesterday for Derek Lively, and he keys what I think was a sort of expectedly dominant rebounding performance for Duke. I'm in a way, I'm almost disappointed that they don't go over 50% on offensive rebounding opportunities. But Jason, can you talk a bit about the rebounding effort yesterday for Duke and specifically the continued growth of Derek Lively?
Yeah, I've bagged on Derek Lively the past few weeks for not getting more rebounds. We've seen the rim protection, and we've seen his ability to finish in the paint, on pick and rolls and that kind of stuff. But the fact that he's now adding a little bit of rebounding to the mix is a big deal. It matters. And most of those stats that you cited there, Sam, most of it came in the first half. He was pretty dominant in the paint for large stretches of the first half of this
that first 6 minutes, he was otherworldly.
Yeah, it was impressive. Blocking shots, grabbing rebounds, getting some scoring stuff. That was the Derek Lively that people have said was the best recruit in the class and a future NBA lottery pick. And it's just so exciting when we get to see more and more glimpses of that player and hopefully see him playing that way for longer stretches. I'm glad you brought up the rebounding. I mean, we told you that Maryland Eastern Shore was a tiny team. Man, we just destroyed them on the boards. 14 offensive rebounds. Sam, like you said, we almost got to 50%. Our offensive rebounding rate was 48.3%. By the way, Maryland Eastern Shore only had 5 offensive rebounds, just a 15% offensive rebounding rate. Ouch. It's really tough to even be in a game when your offensive rebounding rate is that low. And then the other thing I wanted to mention about this Duke team really quick was the defense. We have now, for the 7th time in 12 games, an opponent failed to score 60 points against us. We have now held every single opponent this year. Every single team we've played, all 12 of them, have failed to reach their scoring average for the season. Think about that. No one that plays Duke has an average offensive game against us. That's impressive. I know Ken Pomeroy says that right now Duke is like the 21st best defense in the country. I think they're better than that. We've heard it all year that this team's calling card, John Shire says, is going to be their defense. And I just think that there's absolutely no question that that's where this team is going to, if they're going to have a big run, it's going to be at the defensive end, because I'm still flabbergasted that we haven't had a single opponent yet reach their scoring average against us. Wow.
And on that topic, like I think that the defense will continue to get better because we haven't seen the lineup stabilization that usually helps you get that, that over that final hump in terms of defensive development, because a lot of defense is reacting to the other guys on your team. So, all these players are still sort of figuring out, okay, we have, like, for example, last night, the starting lineup has barely all played together. So, all right, we have this group on the floor. How do we react to certain situations? And again, hopefully the break gives them a bit of an opportunity to reset on that, recalibrate expectations, and maybe have guys start trying different things on defense that they weren't quite comfortable with early in the season. Donald, finish us off in the good. What else do you have from this game?
Yeah, real quickly on the rebounding, I think when you look at the rebounds, it was spread amongst a lot of guys. We had 5 guys, I want to say, that had more than 5 rebounds, and we almost had a 6th in Mark Mitchell. So a lot of guys getting rebounds. I think the one thing also that was good, assists. We had 18 assists on 31 made baskets. Again, we talked about, because how short they are, we could pass over them and look for open guys in corners. We did a lot of that last night. We need to continue that ball movement, even if the team happens to be bigger than this team, which, all but 5 teams or whatever it is in college basketball is bigger than this team we faced last night. But to be able to pass the ball and find open men is going to be key in the ACC season, moving the ball around. We've been doing that very well this season. I hope it continues.
So as we transition to the bad, maybe the decent assist rate also should be mentioned right next to Duke's turnover total from last night. Again, against a team like Eastern Shore, Duke turns the ball over 19 times, which is ugly sort of in any situation.
That's atrocious. That's just such a bad number.
And it's not like that was even coming from the guys deep on the bench who sort of came in garbage time.
I was just gonna say every regular except for Jaden Schutt had at least 1 turnover. There's no one who didn't fall for this.
And Proctor turns it over 4 times. Kyle Filipowski, who is usually pretty good with the ball. I mean, it's not like he's doing a ton of dribbling, but he is dribbling. He is passing. He is sort of integral to the offense. Kyle Filipowski gets the ball stripped a couple times from him, which, maybe this is a little like lazy play during, while they're playing to a down opponent, but I don't love that sort of lack of intensity, even in a game like this. Jason, anything else that you sort of think you could attribute the turnover issue to for Duke last night?
I think a lot of it was the speed of the game, because this was a contest where there were more possessions. It was a faster game than most of the games we've played this year. There were 71 possessions in this game. That's the most we've had in a game since the Delaware game on November 18th. You guys remember when we played Delaware? Feels like a long time ago. And I think that the speed of the game led to some of that sloppiness. But to me, it was just a lot of careless play. It's a lot that Maryland Eastern Shore sort of plays frenetically, frankly, because they're not a very good team. And they have to play fast and out of control, because I'm not sure they're capable of slowing the game down and playing in control. And the other thing about it is, part of the turnovers were these freshmen. And we talked about Filipowski had a bunch, Tyrese Proctor had a bunch, Mark Mitchell. My biggest bad, probably other than the turnovers, was that Mark Mitchell made some just really bad turnovers. He had a great, Mark Mitchell had his best game of the season against Iowa. He had arguably his worst game of the season against Maryland Eastern Shore, back to back. And he got so frustrated that at one point they showed him on the bench, and John Shire wasn't even paying attention to the game because he was focused on talking to Mark Mitchell. I'm not sure if he was scolding him or trying to buck him up a little bit. Different players need different things. But man, Mark Mitchell was awful in this game, and the turnovers by everybody. It was a turnover performance that should have led to the game being. If Duke had been playing a better team, it would have been a huge problem.
I think for me, the mental exhaustion has to also be a factor. I mean, they've played 12 games in 34 days, and John Shire, he didn't really talk much about the turnovers in his post-game presser, like his headlines, if you will, Jason. He mentioned that, it could have been better, but he also really hyped up the fact that, hey, these guys need a break. They've been playing a lot of games in a short period of time. And as freshmen, again, they kind of got thrown to the wolves in the sense of the college basketball season was just very unforgiving and them not being able to mentally take a break. This is what these next 9 days will give us, hopefully, is a mental break of sorts where they can kind of refocus on the details. The attention to detail wasn't there last night. A lot of these, I think they had 7 turnovers in the first 4 minutes of the game. And it was mainly because we would steal the ball from or get a block and then immediately turn the ball back over. And there's a stretch of 3 minutes or so where it felt like both teams had 8 turnovers apiece because they were just throwing the ball back and forth to each other or throwing the ball out of bounds, and not a lot of shots were going off in that time frame. So I think the mental exhaustion is there, and hopefully this break will help them recalibrate and also, again, focus on the fact that, hey, like you said, Jason, these turnovers can kill you when a team is much better than you, Maryland Eastern Shore, which a lot of teams in D1 are. We got to make sure we take care of the basketball while we're taking the ball away from them. That part is great, but we have to take care of the basketball when we do.
Jason, while you were making the comparison between the Eastern Shore game and the Delaware game, I was thinking to myself about how I don't think they're neighbors, because Delaware is all the way up in Wilmington and Eastern Shore is all the way down in Salisbury. But Maryland Eastern Shore and Delaware are both residents of the Delmarva Peninsula. And so I'm worried that if Duke has to play another Delmarva team that things go south. So I looked it up. I believe the only other Delmarva team that is in Division I is Delaware State, which plays in the same conference as Maryland Eastern Shore. And I can tell you, I'm super worried about Delaware State, but Delaware State so far this season is 1-9, and their only win is against a non-Division I school. So no more games against Delmarva this season.
Hopefully, Sam, a team doesn't come out of Assateague, because they got some thoroughbreds over there. And we can't have that.
Donald, that is deep cuts Mid-Atlantic. I don't even know if Jason gets the
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, the Wild Horses of Assateague Island? Jason, you clearly didn't go to 4th grade in the state of Maryland, where we learned all about that.
No idea. You were saying words that could be made up as far as I'm concerned. I've never heard of these things.
Everyone in the DMV will understand exactly what I said. And if you did, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Tell me about it.
I did a project in 4th grade on Talbot County, Maryland. I'm super up to date on the Eastern Shore. Okay. Anything? Jason's looking at us like we have 4 heads.
What is? I don't even know. I'm going to give you guys some Georgia history quiz at some point to make up for all this.
Sea
That's
Island,
fine.
Savannah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Hit me. Stone Mountain.
You want to go back and forth naming obscure Georgia cities? I bet I can be. Ever been to Rabun Gap?
Nope.
Warner Robins.
Warner Robins is big time. That's
Rome,
way bigger than
Georgia.
Rabun Gap.
Rome, Georgia. Cairo,
Dalton,
Georgia. Don't call it Cairo.
Oh God.
That's
Dalton,
a good one.
Georgia, where I could go on a carpet ride.
All right. Are we done with the
Let's
bag?
go to
Can we take
break.
a
Let's go to break.
All right, guys, we're going to take a break. When we get back, we are going to give out our Player of the Week award. We're going to tell you what the highlight was from this game, because we do have to stretch out the segments today. There's not much left. And I will give Jason a little gambling time at the end. Stick around. We are back, and we are talking highlights from the Maryland Eastern Shore game. I have finally committed myself to recognizing that the highlights are part of the agenda for this program. So, Donald, give me your highlight from the Maryland Eastern Shore game.
It's in the second half, like I mentioned, when Dariq Whitehead thoroughly, he just kind of drove the lane, and then one felt swoop. It went from the ball was, basically at his knee to the ball was over his head and being yammed into the rim in front of some poor Maryland Eastern Shore player who just did not see this coming. Half the bench didn't see it coming. Half the fans didn't see it coming. I saw it coming though. But that was my favorite play of the game.
Jason, what you got?
So it's easy to pick the Whitehead slam, and That probably is my favorite play of the game, but I just went ahead and picked a different one for the sake of variety. There was a moment about 12 minutes left in the second half when Tyrese Proctor made a pass to Jaden Schutt for a 3-pointer that was such an absurd pass. I urge folks, if you have this game on DVR, go back and watch it. I don't think we're giving enough credit to Tyrese Proctor's creativity with the ball. Dude made, it's one of these passes like across your body. I don't even know how he made it, but it was like on a line. He really zipped it hard. Tyrese Proctor is going to be a really special player, not just in a Duke uniform, but someday in the NBA. And I thought that play, I love the pass and I love Schutt burying the 3-pointer. Those two freshmen, man, both those guys, they got some skills. They got some serious skills.
I told you I was picking Jaden Schutt's sort of step back three because I love seeing that kind of NBA moxie from a freshman who's barely getting off the bench so far this season. The other cool play, if we're talking about fun passing, Ryan Young had a sort of no look type of pass to Tyrese Proctor for a layup that was extremely nifty. So I love when Ryan Young gets to display that he's just a little bit smarter than everybody else on the court. And it was funny. I was talking with my friend who I was watching this game with about how the team plays so differently when Lively is on the floor versus Ryan Young. I don't know that there's a Duke team in recent memory, at least, where the identity of the center at that moment dictates so much about what the team's offense looks like. But things really run differently. Not that one is necessarily better than the other, but the team really functions differently depending on who's playing the five. So it's sort of an interesting observation. Okay, let's pick our players of the week. Obviously, this was a 2-win week for Duke. They take down Iowa in the more meaningful game in Madison Square Garden. They take down Maryland Eastern Shore in Cameron. We did get a fun, before I ask for your players of the week, we did get a fun email from Tom Wildermuth, who said that there's a big difference between Duke playing apparently in MSG versus Duke playing against a lowly non-conference opponent in Cameron. And in a way, it's almost refreshing to hear that because Cameron, they can rely on the crazies to turn them up. But if they're playing well in big arenas, then that's got to be a good sign for this team. So with all that, let me hear your players of the week. Jason, why don't you take it first?
This is a really tough week, by the way, because Mark Mitchell scored 17 points against Iowa, played great D on Keegan Murray, and then got just 2 points in very limited playing time and a bunch of turnovers against Maryland Eastern Shore. Jeremy Roach has his best offensive game of the season against Iowa and then doesn't play against Maryland Eastern Shore. Because it is player of the week, the whole week, I feel like both those guys, you're allowed to pick them if you want, but for me, I can't take the guy who didn't play, and I can't take the guy who had his worst game of the season. So with those two out of the running, despite playing great against Iowa, and Iowa's the most important game, I went with Tyrese Proctor. He had 15 points and I already pointed out some really creative passing against Maryland Eastern Shore, and I thought he had a very nice game against Iowa as well. In that Iowa game, he had the second most minutes of anybody on the team and had zero turnovers, playing against some, very experienced and very good perimeter players for Iowa. So Tyrese Proctor's my pick as player of the week.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I did not go with him. I was hoping that someone else would so that I can go with Dariq Whitehead. Dariq Whitehead, 23 points in the week, becoming more comfortable in the offensive end, starting to see a lot more of why he's considered such a dynamic player, and really looking forward to the next few, couple of weeks to see how that game will continue to emerge. But, for his progression just over the last week, I mean, again, he had his best game of the season against Iowa at the Garden and follow that up by his best game of the season against Maryland Eastern Shore. So I'm giving him my player of the week.
Jason, I like the caveats that you put on about how it's hard to pick guys who only either played in one game or only played well in one game. With that being said, I'm going to take Jeremy Roach because he was so key down the stretch against Iowa, sort of keeping things in good shape for Duke. He was sort of the rock for that game. And look, Duke had one of its best games of the season against Iowa, arguably its best game of the season against Iowa. And that game looks a lot like what an NCAA tournament game is going to look like for Duke in, a hopeful Sweet 16 and Elite 8. you could even imagine a game like that in the Final Four, and Duke looked really solid with Jeremy Roach, and then and then just to prove how useful he is, Duke comes out and looks, kind of sloppy and disorganized against a team that we knew that they were going to beat the crap out of. So for that reason, I'm taking Jeremy Roach, because he sort of proved this week just how essential he is to this team to be at its best in big moments.
Sam, I love. I now feel, God, you're so much smarter than I am. I wish I had taken Jeremy Roach.
Oh, stop that.
No, I wish I'd taken Jeremy Roach and said the fact that he didn't play against Maryland Eastern Shore and we look so awful is why he should be
He's
player of the
the
week.
player of the week.
It's really
Exactly,
it's smart,
yeah.
man. It's smart.
Well, I come up with good ideas occasionally here. Jason, let's finish this episode with your gambling observations. You said you were in AC. You sent us some
Yes.
NCAA basketball championship lines for certain teams, and you were asking us sort of who you liked. So give us your rundown about the state of college basketball and the odds for national championships here, sort of at the end of non-conference play.
So there were a few interesting. I was in Atlantic City. I went with a buddy of mine. We were going to go play in some poker tournaments. I'll get to that in a moment. There were some very interesting choices, possibilities for winning the national title. Duke is at 18-1. They've come down a little bit from where they were in the preseason. And I went ahead and put a little bit of money on the Blue Devils at 18-1. I'm not sure that it's the smartest bet I've ever made, but I always, whenever I get a chance, if I'm in AC or Vegas, I put some money down on Duke to win the national title. The other one that I thought was really interesting, Virginia's at 20-1. And I kind of love that number. I think Virginia, they're pretty darn good, and they're very experienced. And I think Virginia at 20-1 is a very, very attractive bet. I didn't make the bet myself. I try not to bet on other teams to beat Duke. So winning the national title means you have to do better than Duke. So I did not pick Virginia, but I thought that was a very intriguing possibility of a wager that could be made. The wager I did make that was really cool and really fun, and I had a great time doing it, was on Friday night. I sat in the sports book and watched a bunch of NBA games, and I made a parlay on several Dukies in the NBA. And I want to get you guys' reaction to this. So the parlay was on them scoring the over in points, because it was, individual player points. I went with Zion Williamson over 24.5, Paolo Banchero over 20.5, and Mason Plumlee over 9.5. Which one of those do you think I was sweating the most? It was Mason. Yeah. So Mason actually made it with ease. But there was a moment like in the third quarter of the Charlotte was playing the Knicks where Mason had 9 points. And I was like, there's a very real possibility here that Charlotte just takes him out of the game and he never comes back in the game. Like a guy who doesn't play a ton, Mason's play is sometimes sporadic, not consistent. Betting the over on their points, I was nervous. I was very scared. So those three guys all made it for me. And I won. It was, I won like 6-1 on my money on that wager. So that was a very nice one. I made a mistake though. I should have included RJ Barrett. They had RJ Barrett at over 19.5 points, and RJ hadn't scored more than 20 points in several games. So I did not put him in my parlay. If I had, my odds would have gone from like 6-1 to like 12-1. It would have been a huge parlay. And RJ ended up scoring like 24 points on Friday night. So I made a bad call on not including RJ in my parlay, but the Duke players did nicely for me. The other thing I wanted to mention, I will go ahead and brag. I won my first like real legitimate poker tournament. I played in a poker tournament on Thursday evening. It was a $225 buy-in. There were about 40 players in the tournament. I guess technically I kind of won it and didn't win it, because I got to the final table. I got to the final two. It was me and one other guy. We both had pretty even stacks. And rather than play it all out, we decided to just split the first and second place prize pool. It would have probably taken us 45 minutes, an hour or more to play it out, just because we each had a lot of chips. But it's the first time, as far as I'm concerned, I won. And so this is the first time I've ever won a poker tournament. It was, not like I won friendly ones with friends, like, but this was like a legit thing. And then the very next day on Friday, I played in another tournament that had about 60 players, and I made a deep run in that tournament. I finished 12th, and they paid the top 9, and that was a $400 buy-in. That would have been big money. So that I had as good a 2 days playing poker as I ever have had, and it was a lot of fun.
So, Jason, first off, congratulations on the tournament. I saw you sent pictures of us or to us of you at the table. That's awesome. Really, really like
big old stack of chips in front of me. You see all those chips in front of me?
Yeah. That's that's like an image where everyone's like, "Yo, how much of that you keep?" And you're just like, "I keep enough." Like, this is cool.
Right.
I did have you were mentioning some of the bets that you made. I have a bad beat, a very bad beat that I need to share with you two. It's not in the basketball world. Yesterday, obviously, England played France in soccer in the World Cup, and my friend made a bet, $10, that Harry Kane would have 2 shots on goal in each half, and England would have 9 shots on target for the game. Now, you guys know that England lost 2-1, mainly in part due to a Harry Kane missed penalty. Now, Harry Kane's missed penalty went way over the net, so it's not counted as a shot on target.
Oh my.
He not only ended the game with 1 shot on target in the second half, England ended with 8 shots on target for the game.
Oh, that's
that
brutal.
penalty kick that he aced to the beast would have made him $2,700.
Oh my good God. That is a Donald, man.
That is hey, look, my friend is heated, and I'm gonna tell you right now, Harry Kane is on site. Like, if one of us sees you, you're gonna come up with $2,700 because, man, that is a bad beat.
I am sure that outcome is the worst thing for Harry Kane about missing that shot.
Yep, it will be.
he's devastated about that specifically.
Hey, I got one more fun bad beat story that happened Friday night when we were watching the NBA. So my buddy Andy and I, who were in Atlantic City together, there were these other guys who were seated behind us in the sports book, and this one guy was making like some really fun bets. Like, he had the over under on the Sixers Lakers game for the first quarter only, and the number was 48.5, and the teams were at 48, and there was like 6 seconds left. And like, he's standing up, we're all screaming like, "Oh my God, no one scored, you know? And the Sixers take the ball down the floor, and they've got nothing going on. The ball like goes out to the wing. Joel Embiid is standing almost out of bounds. He's like at the 3-point line. There are 2 guys on him. He's falling out of bounds, and he drains this crazy 3-pointer to hit the over. And this guy had the under. And so this guy lost on just the most absurd Joel Embiid, like, you have no business taking that shot kind of shot. There's nothing like being in a sports book with a bunch of like $10, $5, $10, $20 wagers on exotic, crazy stuff, and then going crazy when they happen or don't happen. It was a lot of fun.
Or you could continue to basically ignore the whole enterprise, as I mostly do, and
you're missing out, man.
And live life like a normie. But I'm happy for you, Jason, when the beats bounce your way. So we root for that, because maybe you'll make enough that you can sponsor the next DBR Final Four trip. So yes,
right. Yeah.
I root for our collective prosperity. All right, guys, we're gonna get out of here on that, unless Jason has more gambling observations. No.
But hey, just super quick, and we don't have time to talk about it, but I do want to mention all of their names. The Duke inducted several former basketball, soccer, football, all kinds of stuff, different people into the Hall of Fame over the weekend. And we should at least mention them on this podcast. So I'm going to give you the list really fast. Alana Beard of women's basketball, National Player of the Year, a hell of a player.
Class of 2004. Let's go.
Yeah. Amanda Blumhurst of women's golf, who I remember like was unbelievable. Allie Curtis at men's soccer, who I believe was Soccer Player of the Year. Kevin Kassier, I'm not as familiar with him because I don't follow men's lacrosse, but he made the Hall of Fame. Anthony Dilwig made it in football. I mean, if you don't remember the Anthony Dilwig, that guy could sling the ball all over the field in football. Carlos Boozer, made the Duke Hall of Fame. And then a couple administrator/coaches, Gail Gostencourse, who really elevated Duke women's basketball in a big way, and Jackie Seiler, who, if you follow Duke sports over the years and you haven't heard the name Jackie Seiler, I don't know what you're doing. She was as involved in the Duke administration as anybody, and to some extent, I believe, sort of paved the way for Duke to now have a female athletic director. Jackie Seiler is a huge person in Duke athletics. So congratulations to all of them on being inducted to the Hall of Fame.
A lot of those names are like, yo, what took so long? Like a lot of names from when I was in school or just after, where you're just like, yo, it took that long to get to the Hall, but all well deserved. Congratulations to all of them.
Donald, I was going to make the same point. I don't understand why Alana Beard wasn't already in the Duke Sports Hall of Fame. She was a National Player of the Year, so it, like, you know,
and
Carlos
her number's
Boozer,
retired.
Yeah, Carlos Boozer doesn't even have his number retired, so it seems weird that it would have taken until now. I also mentioned on Amanda Blumenhurst, the golfer who was so successful at Duke and then had a nice professional career, also married to a Duke athlete, Nate Fryman, who played Major League Baseball. So all kinds of fun Duke connections there. So yes, congratulations to all of the inductees, and congratulations to us on making it through another episode. If we're not congratulating ourselves, then we're not really practicing the kind of self-care that everyone needs on a Sunday morning in December. So we are now on exam break. We'll be back at some point to preview Duke's re-beginning of ACC season. They're 1-0. They did beat Boston College. So Duke heads into the exam break 1-0 in ACC play. They look to go 20-0. That's what we are rooting for. So for Jason Evans and for Donald Wine, I am Sam Klein. Stay in touch with us, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. We will talk to you again soon. This has been DBR Podcast, and this is the Duke Band to take us home.